Okay. All right. So, hello. I'm Dr. Sean Prasad. I'm a doctor of natural medicine and director of the Center for Holistic Healthcare and Education. I help people with chronic illness and difficult to treat cases that don't always respond really well or with conventional medicine and sometimes even other alternative forms of medicine. Today, I've got Leah with me, who also works at our center. She's a certified functional nutritionist and also works in a very holistic manner. And today she's going to be talking to us about menopause. All right, perimenopause, menopause, and all the ins and outs of it. So I'm really excited to have her here. And yeah, we're going to talk about kind of like the holistic approach to these women's health issues surrounding, this transition in life. We're going to talk about nutrition and diet and lifestyle and all the things. So I hope you'll enjoy what we have in store here. All right. So Leah, could you introduce yourself a little bit more? Talk to us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Sean. I'm excited to be here today. So, I'm a registered holistic nutritionist with a certificate in functional nutrition, and I work with women to help them improve their overall health. But within the last couple of years, I've really made it my personal mission to learn more and educate myself with perimenopause and the menopause transition because it's something I'm personally beginning to experience the effects of. And also, a lot of my clients were also in that stage and didn't necessarily know it. So there's just so many changes happening to the body, and I really don't believe that it's something that we need to suffer through. There's so many simple interventions that can be made to make a big difference in their lives and also in the lives of their loved ones and their families as well. So that's a little bit about me and my passion for perimenopause.
Amazing, amazing. So let's dive right into the topic. So first of all, let's kind of define a little bit what perimenopause is and menopause. I too, like we have a lot of clients, probably a majority of, I mean, well, definitely a majority of our clients are women, first of all, and then out of them, a big majority it is in that stage. And so we do
Yeah.
get lots of questions about it and stuff like that. And I think, one of the top questions, first of all, is I'm not sure if I'm in this menopause. I'm starting to feel a little funny, and like I'm starting to feel these symptoms and stuff that I've heard about here or there that might be associated to this and whatever. How does a woman know if they're kind of in that phase now going into perimenopause?
Yeah, so I'll get into some common symptoms in a second, but just to kind of overall define it high level, perimenopause, it's the transition before menopause. So it typically starts in a woman's 40s, but it can definitely start earlier, mid to late 30s, depending on the woman. And it can last several years, anywhere from 4 to 10 years. And it's marked by things like hormone fluctuations. Usually, one of the first things that is noticed is irregular periods and maybe mood swings, sleep disturbances, maybe more pronounced PMS symptoms that were not common during their menstruating years. And then menopause, it's officially diagnosed when a woman has gone 12 months consecutively without a period at all. So this marks the end of her reproductive years. And it also comes with more intense changes. The estrogen levels have tanked almost completely, and it affects every system in the body. It affects bone density, metabolism, heart health, and some symptoms that might be noticed during this time, like I said before, is the irregular periods. But also, what can come along with it is hot flashes, night sweats, mood changes is usually a big one. Just feeling more irritable or more anxious or depressed. Sleep disturbances, so having a hard time, maybe experiencing anxiety, fatigue, weight gain is another one that I would say the majority of my clients come in with, that stubborn weight gain. It's like, I've been trying the things that normally work and they're just not working anymore. So that's usually an indication. Brain fog, so really feeling, and I'll talk in about one of my case studies, and she thought she was experiencing early onset dementia because she was
Oh,
just
wow.
experiencing such extreme cognition issues and forgetfulness and that sort of thing.
Right, right.
Also, heart palpitations, and then vaginal dryness is also a main concern as well. So, as well as just those kind of like high level symptoms. And I just want to let everyone know that it can feel very doom and gloomy when we're talking about what exactly is happening because there are so many changes. But just keep in mind, like, stick with us till the end because there's so many things that you can do to kind of help mitigate these symptoms. But on top of the kind of high level symptoms that people are coming in with and noticing, there are also things going on under the hood, like insulin resistance, osteoporosis, coronary artery disease, sarcopenia, so loss of muscle tissue. So there's a lot of things that are also really affecting our health and our long-term health that can be addressed. So that's kind of what it looks like. And in terms of actually testing for perimenopause, unfortunately, there isn't like a test. I mean, if you're in menopause, you can get your levels checked and they'll see that the estrogen just is no longer there. In perimenopause, though, it is recommended that you just get a good baseline wherever you are, whether you're in your 30s, your mid 30s, your early 40s, just getting a baseline of things like luteinizing hormones, so LH and FSH, and estrogen, progesterone, just to kind of see where you're at. And then every year, you can check and see if it's declining, see if those numbers are changing. And that's kind of a good indication. But typically, we just go off symptoms.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, that sounds like fun.
It sounds like so much fun. And to be honest, like when I started learning, it feels very daunting.
Yeah,
Knowing that it's going to be sometimes half of our adult lives is, we're going to be either in perimenopause or menopause or postmenopause.
yeah.
But like I said, keep hope. There's so many things that can be done, and there's so much. It's a good time in this world to be a woman going through perimenopause because there's so many people talking about it now, and there's so many resources and books and podcasts.
Yeah,
So that's kind of my personal mission too, is just to like make it normalized
yeah,
and
absolutely.
talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So kind of following up the doom and gloom side of things, before we get into all the advice and stuff, could you give an
Yeah.
example, like on your end, some of the case studies you've worked with and stuff like
Yeah.
that, where you've had success and that kind of thing, just so we can inject a little bit of hope here that, what's possible with holistic medicine?
Yeah, for sure. I'll share one now and then I'll share one a little bit down the line. So, I had a client, she was in her early 40s and she was experiencing some new symptoms. So, digestive issues. She was not going to the washroom every day. She wasn't having a bowel movement every day. She was noticing like racing heart. She wasn't sleeping well at night, weight gain in the midsection, and brain fog and forgetfulness. So these symptoms were getting worse, and she was noticing that it was really affecting her day to day life. It was affecting her relationships with her husband and her kids. And so when she came to me, like I said, many times people come about weight gain. So that was one of her main concerns, despite all these other symptoms she was also experiencing. So she had that stubborn weight, she had brain fog. And she's the one I mentioned before. She thought she was experiencing something like early onset dementia. I mean, she didn't talk to her doctor about it, but she just kind of threw that comment away.
Right.
And once we talked about her lifestyle, we assessed the foods that she was eating, when she was eating. When I work with people, we go pretty deep those first couple sessions, just getting to know each other and peeling back those layers and seeing what their life looks like and what their diet looks like. We discovered that it was likely perimenopause. I have kind of like a survey that they can go through just to see what symptoms she's experiencing. And so we started by improving her diet, just educating her what was happening and why it was important to balance her blood sugar. Really wanted to address her digestion as well before anything else. So make sure that she was having that daily bowel movement. It's really important because, it helps detox. And if you're not going every day and detoxing, those extra hormones and toxins, then they just recirculate in your body and it can make symptoms worse. She was also not eating much meat. She was mostly vegetarian and she was only eating a couple meals a day consistently. So she was kind of, yeah, she was just forgetting to eat, or she just said she wasn't hungry in the morning. So when we started, we increased her protein intake. She was open to eating meat, she just kind of wasn't, and didn't know the importance of it and why it was so important. So we started adding that in, and also just started getting her to eat consistent meals. So eating breakfast consistently, making sure that she's getting, a good balanced meal, so protein, fiber, and healthy fats. And just doing these small changes in the first month or so, she did start to feel a little bit better. Her digestion was better. She did start going to the washroom more regularly. We also added in some ground flax seeds, and that kind of helped to move things along. And she noticed her sleep was a little bit better as well. So after we did kind of the basics and making sure she was going to the washroom and also addressing some lifestyle things like, when you are sitting down to eat, just making sure your body is in that rest and digest or the parasympathetic mode because, so many of us are very busy and we just eat on the go and your body doesn't properly digest when that's the case. So just paying attention to those basics like I always do and then adding in some supportive supplements. So we added in some magnesium, some vitamin D, some omega fish oils, and then some adaptogenic herbs as well that really helped her kind of level out. And then we started talking about adding in resistance training, which is really important. And I'll go into more detail in a moment. But lifting weights, just making sure that you're using your muscles, because if you don't lose it or if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. And especially women who are over 40, their muscle mass really does decrease naturally. So you need to counter that by making sure you're getting enough protein and making sure you're using your muscles under a heavy load to help. It helps with bone integrity and muscle, and it helps in the future with potential falls and balance. And it also helps with cognitive function as well, and just giving you those feel good hormones. So yeah, so that's kind of where we went with it. And
Amazing.
in the end, she was feeling so much better. We did talk about the potential of hormone replacement therapy with her doctor in the future. But for now and the age that she was, it was still really working. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where we went.
Amazing, amazing. Well, there's so much
Yeah.
there to like unpack and stuff like that. You
Yeah.
touched on so many like points that I definitely want to talk about today and stuff like that. One of them is I think a big misconception a lot of women have from like the feedback I've gotten is that like hormones just kind of do their thing. And they have no control over that. It's just like
Mhm.
it's like this isolated factor that just kind of does what it wants and there's nothing they can do to influence that. And so a lot of
Yeah.
times that's why there's this like sense of like dread and like, hopelessness when it comes to menopause and that whole conversation because it's like, well, what's the use in, trying to be healthy because my hormones are my hormones. I've seen that quite a bit. Could you address that misconception and kind of explain a little bit why lifestyle factors can affect hormones, why nutrition can affect hormones, why supplements can affect hormones, why sleep can affect hormones, all that kind of thing? Could you touch?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Hormones are when they're fluctuating so wildly, it really does put a lot of stress on the body. And the way that your body is reacting to that stress can be seen in these negative symptoms. So it's important to look at everything that is happening in your life and the foods that you're eating because it can all be stress. So let's say you're eating like high sugar foods or really pro-inflammatory foods like fried foods all the time. Like that is a stress on your body. Let's say you're not sleeping enough. That is a stress on your body. And it just kind of exacerbates all of the stresses that are already happening with the fluctuations of hormones. So if you can take away and peel back or remove those stressors from your life that you actually do have control over, like making sure that you are getting, 8, 7, 8 hours of quality sleep every night, making sure that your body or your blood sugar is balanced. Because if you're on a constant roller coaster with like, blood glucose levels and insulin levels, that is just going to add more stress to your body and potentially lead to things like prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. And so, if you are addressing these with balancing your blood sugar by eating those balanced meals throughout the day, not skipping meals, which causes more stress on your body, even the right type of exercise, you'll see with my next case study, just she was just running a lot. And that was a really hard stress on her body. And sometimes you need to take those away in order for the body to be able to level out a little bit more naturally with the hormones. So I don't know if that answers you, but that's just
Yeah.
part of it. Yeah.
Absolutely good. I'm glad you touched on that. So real quick, I'm gonna give you some rapid fire kind of little questions here. I just want a yes or a no. Okay.
Okay.
So with menopause, can hot flashes be overcome?
Yes.
Vaginal dryness, can that be overcome?
Yep.
Sleepless nights, can that be overcome?
Yes.
Bone loss, muscle mass loss, and issues, can that be addressed?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's
Yep.
definitely hope with some of the
For
top
sure.
things there. How about libido? That's another big one. Libido and
Yep.
energy, can that be addressed?
Yes.
All right, so there is hope. There's hope. Okay.
There's totally hope. Yeah, there's
Good,
totally
good,
hope.
good. All right,
Yeah.
so let's get into now. I mean, and you've touched a little bit and you've spoken a little
Yeah.
bit, some of the things you've done with cases you've worked with and stuff. Let's do a little bit of a deeper dive on those areas you spoke about, some lifestyle factors, exercise, nutrition, supplementation, all that kind of stuff. Let's get back into that kind of one by one and break it down and just like explain, one or two of your kind of maybe most important pieces of advice on each one that people can maybe start putting into practice on their own and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
let's say with nutrition, okay, diet and supplements, what would you tell women? What do you want women to know here?
Okay, so I already touched on some of these, like you said, but really focusing on nourishing your body with every meal that you're getting, trying not to skip meals. I know intermittent fasting is really popular, and we can talk more about that, but it can work for some people if they're eating enough and they're nourishing enough during their eating window. But if they're not, which is so common, like so many women the common theme is that they're noticing this weight gain. So they start eating less and they start working out more. And this is actually just, like I said before, adding to that stress load on the body. So nourishing your body with food, making sure you're getting, protein, healthy fats, and fiber at every single meal, not eating those naked carbs, which is, carbs just on their own, even just a fruit on its own, like that is a carbohydrate. Have some nuts with it, have some nut butter with it, and that can kind of help level it out. So I really do look at balancing your blood sugar as kind of one of the foundations. And then really reducing inflammatory foods because inflammation levels are higher during perimenopause when the estrogen levels are starting to dip. And so having higher inflammation can exacerbate any symptoms that you're having. So trying to reduce, all the added sugar, the processed foods, the fried foods. So just like sticking to real food, which is, what I recommend for all of my clients and I try to do myself. Of course, it's not always 100%, but just trying your best. And then really supporting gut health as well and detoxification. Like I said, make sure you're pooping every day. If you're not, let's address it. Like, what is going on? What is happening that is, clogging you up? Like, what can we add in or what can we take away? Making sure they're getting a lot of fiber that helps support estrogen metabolism and gut function as well. Making sure they're drinking enough water, having liver supporting foods like leafy greens and cruciferous vegetables, like just making sure they're getting those every day. So many people just still aren't eating enough vegetables. So just trying to add it in as much as possible when you can there. Like when you're looking at your plate, half of that plate or bowl should be vegetables. So just that's kind of a good little tip. And it feels like a lot at the beginning. You're chewing a lot, but you get used to it. And it's kind of a nice reason to sit down and relax for a couple minutes.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, those are some of the basics for food. Do you want me to get into like some supplements or do you want to
Yeah,
do
absolutely.
that
Well, I mean,
after?
those are all great pieces of advice for on the dietary side and stuff, things that are practical, things that women can start thinking about right now, and they can start making those changes and stuff like that, and start thinking about things a little bit more. So that's
Mhm.
wonderful. So yeah, let's talk about supplementation here. What are kind of some of the important things that women should be thinking about?
Yeah, so before we get into the supplements, I'll just talk a little bit more just looking at stress. Like stress really can be one of the big factors that can make your issues worse. During this time, women are typically, when they're in their 40s, they have kids that are growing, they have aging parents, they have a career, they just have so many things going on. So just trying to prioritize space and time and even just scheduling it into your calendar to make sure that you have a little bit of time to decompress and de-stress, and that can be a big changer. Also, something specific is just reducing exposure to hormone disrupting chemicals. So, many women are using different makeup and deodorants and hairspray, and maybe they're aging, so they're maybe adding more just to feel good about themselves. And that can have, depending on the ingredients that are used, that can really have a negative effect on the body. So trying to reduce those exposures to things like plastics as well. So that's something I talk with my clients about, as well as just kind of a slow transition. It's not like you have to throw everything out and buy all new. Like if you're using a Teflon pan to make your eggs in the morning, let's maybe explore stainless steel or cast iron or that sort of thing. And then looking at your makeup. So there are some really good apps out there that you can just scan the makeup and it will tell you if it's good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, if it has a lot of toxins or not. So slowly, when your lipstick is done, like try to find one that is better.
Yeah.
So little things like that. And then when it comes to adding in some herbs and nutritional support, making sure that your bases are covered with the basics like magnesium. It's such a wonderful one. Magnesium can also really help if you're experiencing a lot of PMS or experiencing like pain from periods, that sort of thing. So adding in more magnesium during that time. Omega 3s and the fish oils, EPA and DHA can really help with things like inflammation. B vitamins can help with cognitive function, which is, usually a big concern. Vitamin D is just something that we should all be taking. And zinc can also really help with that inflammation and all of that. And then also adding in some more specific adaptogens is something that I typically do. And adaptogens can help modulate stress and hormone functions and fluctuations in the body. So some of the main ones, and it really depends on what your symptoms are, who you are, but some of the main ones that I may use are rhodiola or maca or
Mhm.
ashwagandha. There are also some good blends that I really like. So this is one of them. It's Menosense, and this has a Vitex or chase tree berry, which can really help alleviate menopausal symptoms as well. So that's just some of them. Oh, let me talk about a couple more. So, collagen is another one.
Yeah.
Naturally, we're losing collagen production as we age. So, supplementing can really help mitigate those losses and help even with things like arthritis or joint pain. If you make your own, if you cook meat and you say you cook a chicken or something, make your own bone broth. That's a really great way to get the natural collagen and just drink that regularly. And that can be really helpful. And then creatine. This is a new one on my radar, to be quite honest. As a woman, I always thought, oh, if I take creatine, it's going to make me bulky, but not, that's totally false. It really helps with muscle energy. So it can, if you are strength training, which I recommend to all women, it can really help you improve some gains. It also helps reduce inflammation and it helps reduce things like oxidative stress and it helps with bone reabsorption. It has been shown to mitigate depressive episodes and helping with things like memory and brain fog. Really, it's just overall better mental capacity because it's supplying more energy to the brain. So that's one that I really like, and I've started using personally, just kind of as a maintenance dose, 3 to 5 grams a day, and it just it can really help. So that was a lot, but those are some of my go-tos that I
Yeah.
think about.
Good, good. Well, it's good to know, first of all, that there's stuff out there that's natural that women can rely on to help
Yeah,
manage these symptoms and stuff like that, and get to the root of what's kind of making the symptoms much worse during that menopausal time and stuff like that. So it's yeah, no, it's excellent that you shared, there's a wide spectrum of things out there, for you to
for sure.
explore. It's not just one or two things, because sometimes women, they come to the clinic and stuff, and a lot of times they've already done some homework. So they're
Mhm.
like, I've been on the magnesium, I've been on this and stuff. But, there's much more than that. A lot of times, people haven't even heard of adaptogens, right? And
Yeah,
that's a whole category of supplements in itself that can be very helpful, right?
for sure. Yeah.
So, it's very good. I'm glad that you brought up, some of the different things out there. Um, so moving ahead here, because I know we're running out of time, hormone replacement therapy.
Yeah.
Okay, I get asked about this all the time. There's always someone in the friend group who's been on it and who swears by it and all this kind of stuff. Is it something that's for everybody? Should every woman be on hormone replacement therapy? Or, like, is there an alternative to that? What's the difference between synthetic hormones and bioidentical hormones? Where does a woman start if they want to explore that world?
Okay, so hormone therapy is one of those things that I am just really diving deep into and learning a lot about myself because obviously I can't prescribe hormone therapy, but I can recommend that maybe you go to your doctor and talk with them and ask them about it. And if your doctor is unwilling and they just shut you down immediately, try to talk to somebody else. There are many people out there and there are hormone specialists and they work with women. Unfortunately, you usually have to pay out of pocket depending on what your plan, your insurance plan is, but it can be they can be very beneficial. There was a lot of fear about hormone replacement therapy back in the 90s, early 2000s, because there were some studies that were showing that women on hormone replacement therapy had a higher risk of getting breast cancer. But it has been recently discovered that that study was designed poorly and that's actually not true. So back in the day, a lot of people would not recommend it. Doctors would not. They were very afraid of recommending HRT to their women because they thought we're just going to give them breast cancer. It's just not. It's one of those things like fat where we thought fat was bad, but really fat is good. We just
Right.
kind of have to erase it from our mind. So getting into the types of hormone therapy, there's synthetic and bioidentical, like you said. So synthetic hormones are made from chemical compounds, but they don't have the same molecular structure as the original sex hormones in your body. So your body does the work to convert them into a usable form. And usually they're coming from animal sources. So like horse, pregnant mare, pregnant horse urine. And so they can work, but typically they're like a one size fits all and they have stronger or different effects than the natural hormones in the body. So they can lead to more side effects. So what the preferred type of hormone therapy is bioidentical. They're made from naturally derived ingredients that usually come from plants, so typically yams or soy, and they're structurally identical to those naturally produced in the body. So it can be a much better molecular match. And there are lower risks for things like blood clots. And they also have just better versions and more potential to personalize the dosing to the client. Because that's the thing, everybody's different. So when you ask, can everybody take it? I don't know, but I mean, definitely talk to your doctor. And it is becoming much more common knowledge that there can actually be a lot of beneficial effects taking hormone therapy, even starting earlier in perimenopause versus older postmenopause, say in their 60s. It can have some health effects. So if you have cardiovascular disease in your family, maybe you want to look into it because it can actually be more protective for the heart, for the brain, and then for the bones, osteoporosis as well. It can actually be more protective and it can actually help you. So it is something that is kind of new information to me that, it's not so bad. It's not so unnatural. I think they can definitely be used well if you're working with someone that can really tailor it to you, along with all of the basics that we talked about earlier.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah,
All right. Well, that's really good to know. I know it's
yeah,
something that I get asked about all the time. And a lot of times, when I talk about identical hormones, people have never even heard of that. It's never
yeah.
been part of the discussion and stuff like that with their doctors and things. And sometimes they have pretty bad side effects with the synthetic stuff, but when they switch over, it works much better for them. So it's good that we can bring that to light. So again, even in that world, women know there are other options, right? So if one thing didn't
For sure.
work for you, there's another option that you could consider and see if that has a better effect, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And the main thing is that you don't need to suffer. If you're doing all the basics and you're still like with nutrition and stress and supplements, and you're still experiencing symptoms, you don't need to like white knuckle through it. There's
Yeah,
definitely something that you can
yeah,
do.
yeah.
And if you're interested in learning more about hormone replacement therapy, I highly recommend a book called The New Menopause by Mary Claire Haver, and it's chock full with really useful information.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Um, yeah, no, I think an important point there is, especially in cases where they've tried everything, they're exercising, they're doing the right things with sleep, they're doing all the things with their diet, they're taking their supplements and all that kind of stuff, and yet they're still struggling. I think that's one of the, I know for me, that's one of the key points where I start saying, well, maybe you should start to explore working with a hormone specialist or something like that and kind of look into that option here to kind of fill the gap, right?
For sure.
So,
Yeah, it doesn't
yeah,
need to be one or the other. It can be
yeah,
it can
yeah.
be both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. All right. So we only have a couple minutes left here. Just to like recap a little bit, menopause can be a tricky thing to navigate. It can be tricky to navigate it on your own, especially if you are having, one or more of these symptoms that we spoke about earlier that are so common in that time period. But I think what it's one of the key takeaway message is that even though a lot of these symptoms are common, it doesn't mean that they're normal, right? It's often an indication of underlying imbalances. And I think some of the red flags we spoke about here is, what is your lifestyle like? How much extra stress are you putting on your system as a result of poor lifestyle choices, including dietary factors and maybe not having a good sleep hygiene and maybe not exercising enough and all the things, right? So that's a really important consideration in all of this, right? And you gave really good advice in terms of things that women should start thinking about, some of the big, things as far as diet, as far as supplementation, as far as like strength training and exercise and stuff like that, optimizing sleep, all of these things. So all of it very, very important. And then, of course, our discussion on the hormone replacement therapy. It's not because we're natural that these types of things are a complete no-no, because you don't have to suffer through things. These things are great tools that when they're used correctly and they're used in the right context, they can be very valuable, right? So that's wonderful. Um, the other thing you spoke about that I thought was very good was the toxicity factor in reducing your toxic load and all of that kind of stuff. All of this is super, super important as far as like the whole holistic approach. And these are the exact things that, myself and Leah help guide people through when we work with you. We look at your diet, we look at your nutrition, we look at your lifestyle, we help you with taking those steps and reducing your toxic load. We look at all of these factors, right? And that's what makes it really holistic and very, very effective. If you want more information on some of the kind of basics you can start to do to kind of live a little bit more holistically and stuff like that, I do have a video series on our website called The 5 Root Causes of Disease, which kind of dives into all of these areas we spoke about. And some other ones too that are really interesting, like the microbiome and epigenetics and, some of these really interesting and topics. And there's also a lot of great advice there too, if you're just looking to kind of get an introduction and kind of get, started with some basics on your own. But otherwise, I really recommend that book an appointment with Leah and see how she can help you and help guide you through this whole process. Because, like we said, it can be a little bit daunting to do all of that on your own. All right. Very good. Any last words? We got like 20 seconds left.
No, thank you so much, Sean, and I hope to speak to people soon. I really want to help.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.